Well, this year marks the 45th anniversary of Friday the 13th. While the anniversary was technically a month ago, this month we actually have a Friday the 13th during the summertime. So I can't think of a better time to revisit one of the most iconic franchises of American pop culture, against the happiness of film critics and parents. Friday the 13th is a franchise that has been an inspiration to a new generation of horror filmmakers and fans, to show you how you can make a fortune with taking a camera out in the woods and a couple dollars in your pocket. The trope of the hockey mask wearing killer has become one of the most recognizable images of all horror. Enough to spit out 10 movies and a reboot and a crossover, most of which all happened within a few years or a year within the previous film's release. Friday the 13th became an annual event in the 80s, with 83 and 87 being the only 2 years of the 1980s that didn't have a new one. One of the most desired films for adolescent youths to try and sneak into the theater or get their hands on a VHS tape. Sure, they might be able to catch it on TV sometime, if they're lucky, but it'll also be greatly censored. They couldn't see all the good bits like the gore and nudity, which all goes to the notoriety of these films. Bruce Campbell once said that when it came to how audiences saw horror films back in the day, well, you had porn, and then you had horror right above that. And Friday the 13th really fed that stereotype. Cheap films with boobs, blood, drinking, and lots of fun. So kick back as we revisit these films and give them a little ranking at the end of each review. But try not to get too heated by the rankings, some of them will be controversial, because at the end of the day, these are just films you watch when you get drunk with your friends and want to have a good time. Friday the 13th, the movie that started it all. Sean S. Cunningham, the director of Friday the 13th, worked in horror before with Wes Craven, and like many others, he was inspired by the slasher film that took the world by storm, John Carpenter's Halloween. The film was brilliantly adored by critics and moviegoers alike. The movie that made you scared to be a babysitter, with its iconic silent killer Michael Myers, tasteful kills, magnificent camera work. Most of all, it was an independent film, and cheap. With a budget just over $300,000, give or take. It took in $70 million at the box office. Now, what filmmaker wouldn't have stars in their eyes after that? While slasher films most certainly existed before Halloween, it was that film that really brought the craze to mainstream and truly made it the subgenre that a lot of filmmakers wanted to tackle to make some quick bucks. And me calling the film a ripoff is not me making fun of the film either. Quite literally, the filmmakers themselves have said that.
Halloween had made a lot of money at the box office, and we were going to rip it off. And that's Sean's exact quote. He said, Halloween's making a lot of money, let's rip it off. So
Cunningham wasn't very proud of his work with The Last House on the Left, and thus wanted to make something that would shock viewers while being a roller coaster ride. The original title was A Long Night at Camp Blood, which will later be used as a mock title within the films to describe Crystal Lake.
He neglected to mention that downtown they call this place Camp Blood.
Cunningham changed it to Friday the 13th, which is famously a bad omen day for several different superstitions surrounding it. Funny enough, the name Friday the 13th had already been used in a film before. Apparently they wanted to sue, there was some resolvement found. The screenplay was handled by Victor Miller, a soap opera writer. One of the most important contributors to the film was master of special effects Tom Savini, who by this point was very popular for his work in Dawn of the Dead. It goes without saying that his work in this film tends to get the most praise. 1958, a group of wholesome counselors at the camp singing Hallelujah. Immediately we get a POV shot accompanied by some music. In this film, the soundtrack composed by Harry Manfredini, the music only plays when the killer is present. There are so many opportunities for music stings in this film that are not utilized for the express reasoning of the killer is there. This was also meant to ease us with silence or ambience, so that they would be jolted more when something spooky happens, which brought birth to the famous. The sound is Manfredini saying "kill mommy" in the microphone and going crazy with the echo and reverb. Here we have the killer watching over the sleeping children. We might get a sense of uncertainty here, but these children are safe, for now at least. And there is something maternal here. On the other hand, two counselors go off on their own for some
A little premarital sex.
Moving close to the Reagan era in the 1980s, this was a pretty popular theme of concern. Kids, particularly teens, were steering away from those good family values into the devil, rock and roll, sex and drugs. But here in the woods at camp, there are no parents, so these youths can kick back with ease and do the nasty no-no without fear of repercussions. Or so they thought. The opening sequence is nice because it establishes the legend of Camp Blood. Crystal Lake is a place where something bad happened years ago. But now we have some goober with a porn stash who wants to reopen the camp. As the cook Annie tries hitching her way to the camp, she learns more from the superstitious townfolk about the creepy lake where a young boy drowned, and since nothing but bad things have happened there. Classic horror trope here, like Harker arriving in Transylvania. You got Crazy Ralph, the soothsayer, who Cunningham's intentions was to also have him kind of be a red herring, although he feared no one would ever actually consider Ralph to be the threat. It is a little too easy. What's really fun is how they don't even fully dismiss Crazy Ralph's rantings. The truck driver here says, "Pay no mind," and then immediately also starts warning Annie in the sequence where they definitely were not filmed next to each other. Sure enough, he tried to warn her. By this point, someone watching the film for the first time might be wondering, Jason can drive a car? Because, you know, everybody thinks of Jason when they think of this franchise. I actually wonder if that makes the twist in the end still effective today, even for newcomers this late in. You know, unless they had already seen Scream.
Name the killer in Friday the 13th.
Jason! Jason! Jason!
I'm sorry. That's the wrong answer.
To Kill here is a pretty intense chase in the woods, which we will see a lot. But really, this was the first big movie to do the whole stalking or hiding in the woods, which these early entries really rely on. They couldn't afford you-know-who for every scene in this movie that they're actually in, so the POV shots are utilized a lot more. It does build an uneasiness of something or someone watching you in the woods. As someone who's grown up by the woods, they can be creepy as hell on their own. Or some critter or snake going to get your ass. Although after this film, myself included, imaginations of a creepy killer watching behind some trees definitely started to plague more minds. The majority of the film is spent with the camp counselors sent in to refurbish the recently opened Camp Crystal Lake. There's Steve, the guy who's opening the camp. He's the authority figure trope of the group, who is mostly absent when all the bad things start to happen. Joined by Steve is Alice, played by Adrienne King. Originally, Cunningham wanted a known name to play the role, but then they realized that they could not afford it. The same could be said for most of the film's cast. They were chosen under the conditions that they looked good, they could read the lines from the script half decently, and that they would work cheap. Probably the most important of the three. Among the crowd is a young Kevin Bacon, who certainly went on to have the biggest career after this. Kind of like Nightmare on Elm Street having young Johnny Depp in it. Another notable actor is Harry Crosby, who has since retired from acting, son of the legendary entertainer Ben Crosby. These are all standard youths who are not without their flaws, though most of those flaws would be seen as simple as people learning about themselves, or just being young. Alice is not quite as straight-laced as Laurie Strode. The film tones it down, but there's still heavy implications. The novel and the original script states explicitly that she's actually having an affair on her lover back home that she started here with Steve. The others all have their quirks. Ned is the goofball, and is considered to be one of the earliest, if not first, practical joker victim trope. Although he shows that his humor and is more of a coping mechanism for his own feelings. Again, showing that these are just kids being kids, exploring, romancing, having fun. Even with the corny writing and dialogue, there's something here about people. How did he even get in there? The film takes a severe break from the killing to spend a good bit of time to get to know these characters, which is truthfully not always a privilege that we get. Even when it's slower here in the middle of the film, it's still building tension. We're getting to know these kids with the knowledge that one of them just died earlier, and there's someone watching them in the woods so they aren't safe. Things do start to pick up when a storm approaches the camp. A lot of great composition work here, really utilizing the environments given to them. Yep, there's our first one for the series.
Giggity.
Kevin Bacon gets an arrow through his throat, which is easily one of the coolest on-screen deaths ever done on camera. It looks so good still today. I hope YouTube doesn't throw a fit about it.
And Altom's best work is exactly what they cut out. It's like the better job he does, the more they want to cut it because it looks too real. If he was a really lame special effects artist, I guess they would like it, right?
And if you are watching this movie, I recommend the uncut version. There's no major scene differences, just a few extra frames added on kills, and the one sex scene if you want to see Kevin Bacon getting his ass pinched. God damn it, Savini, you are an artist. Walking barefoot in the rain in the woods. I guess getting killed saved her from the ringworm. The rest of the film has the characters being killed, both on and off screen. Brenda standing next to the damn archery target where she almost met her fate earlier. Bill getting killed, checking the generator. There's some clever stuff here. We're kind of seeing the origin of the ironic deaths, which this franchise is big for. Steve is also killed in a very nonchalant way.
Hi. What are you doing out in this mess?
And then we watch Alice make coffee. From her waking up, to setting the stove, to finally getting the damn coffee. Look, I'm all about building suspense, but this is filler. Most of these movies are short, barely even an hour and a half. Did we really need a whole fucking 4 minutes of her making coffee just to have her go outside and explore? You can cut the scene and it still works. It doesn't hurt the movie. In fact, it gives it a little bit of a better flow. But instead, we have her making coffee for 4 minutes. I can defend a lot of slow moments in movies, but it really just feels like we're eating up the runtime here. This is a built-in bathroom break within the movie. I don't even have to pause the thing. If they had a theatrical rescreening or something, be sure to remember that when Alice wakes from the couch, that's your time to go take a piss. And the rest of the film kicks ass. Alice finds the corpses of her friends. Oh, that looks so cool. With the killer tormenting Alice, throwing Brenda's body through the window. Actually, another trope of these movies. Speaking of, final warning before spoilers. The killer, famously, is Mrs. Voorhees, played by Betsy Palmer, who said that the script, in her words,
read it and I said, what a piece of shit.
Palmer was known for playing in westerns and dramas, and she herself was confused as to why she was asked to be in the film. But she wanted the money to buy a new car, so she took $1,000 a day for 10 days of shooting. It wasn't all cynical, though. She did put her own work into Mrs. Voorhees and the character's backstory, which is not all entirely explicit in the film. Pamela got pregnant as a teen. There's point one. Palmer, when playing the role, figured that since Pamela was from a very conservative time, disowned by her parents for having a child out of wedlock. Who the hell knows where the father is? So here's a young, struggling single mother with Jason, who was a special boy. She was very protective because of his condition, and Jason was very sheltered because of that. She took a job at Crystal Lake, and Jason was bullied and harassed there. And while the counselors were off having sex and being negligent, Jason drowned in the lake. His body was never found. Pamela snaps and begins hearing Jason telling her to kill the counselors.
Kill her, Mommy. Kill her.
Nothing supernatural here, just a broken mother. That was the motivation for creating the killer of this film. A mother who would literally kill for her child. And she is a rather sympathetic villain, her world stolen from her. And so the curse of Camp Crystal Lake was her revenge. It was an insane twist, really. From a time where killers were usually male, and even this film tries to trick you into thinking that with the glimpses we get of the killer beforehand. Palmer may have hated this movie, but at least she actually tried in the acting. Hell, she actually slapped King when they were rehearsing this fight scene, which broke her into tears. Cunningham had to remind Palmer that this isn't theater, and in film, they don't have to do it for real. She does this reverse Norman Bates thing here, which is really unsettling.
Don't let her get away, Mommy. Don't let her live. I won't, Jason.
It's a little over the top, but the motivations are enough to buy into. That said, the fight between the two is... Alice beheading Pamela, however, is one of the most iconic horror film moments ever. The film was actually supposed to end here, with Alice on the canoe, but it was Tom Savini who suggested the film needed another scare. He had just seen Carrie and thought Friday the 13th needed the same thing, and suggested the Jason appearance at the end. It was meant to be just a simple last jump scare in Alice's dream, but instead it turned into a cliffhanger that birthed a franchise.
Then he's still there.
So where does the original fall now? When it first released, critics hated it, calling it a bland gore fest that exploited teens and mental illness and grief.
Let's go out and hire us some more women and some more killers and make us some money.
That's why they call these things exploitation films, these rotten ones, because they exploit one element and make it sort of sick. Also, many of the attacks in these films take on women who are scantily clad.
Of course, the film did well enough with audiences who didn't care what the critics had to say because they wanted to see the gore and the exploits. Friday feels like one of those movies that, as a horror fan, you're obligated to like. You can't call yourself a fan of horror if you don't treat the original Friday the 13th like the Holy Grail. Well, I don't. I was trained at a young age to know the lore and mythos of Jason, to know precisely when he got his mask and when he takes the mantle as the killer. I was raised in a horror-loving household. Knowing who Bela Lugosi and Boris Karloff were before my age hit double digits was just as important as knowing who was on Mount Rushmore. That said, I can't pretend I love this movie more than I do. I respect it greatly for the doors that it opened, and for Tom Savini's impeccable work, for the score, the camera work, but this movie is pretty boring at times. It has great moments and not great moments. So I'm gonna put it here. Hopefully that won't get me beheaded. Not even a year later, and seriously, the sequel came out a few days shy of a year from the original, there was Friday the 13th Part 2. And you know what? I don't give a shit. This movie is better than the first. It just is. It's treated as a bad sequel for obvious reasons.
I got the script, and Jason is running around. I thought, what are you doing? There is no Jason. No, the mother's the killer. Jason was a kid that drowned in the lake.
This is the film that makes the controversial decision to have Jason be the killer. When Paramount got the rights for Friday the 13th after a bidding war, they knew that this was something that was going to sell even if it was bad. They wanted a Friday the 13th film every year, and originally were going to have them be disconnected like an anthology series. Unfortunately for Cunningham, the producers opted to have Jason return and be the killer this time. This concept turned off a lot of people who worked on the first film, so the Savini effects will be absent for the next couple films, and that does hurt it a little bit. This film opens 2 months after the first one. Now pay attention here because the timeline for these movies gets real messed up. The opening scene here is 2 months later, alright, and we have Alice from the first film. King wanted to not be majorly involved with this film, both for salary reasons and because apparently she had a bad run-in with a crazy obsessed fan after the first movie.
And then slowly I realized I had a stalker. I had an ordeal with him up close at one point, which in itself is a horror movie.
So this film opens with a 6-minute recap. Now, keep in mind, home media wasn't definitely not a big thing yet. And if you didn't catch it, you didn't catch it. And then we have an opening section with King walking out of her house, improvising. Yeah, apparently this was not scripted. They just let her go walk around. So first we had her kill time making coffee, and now they just let her roam around the house, making up a phone call with her mom that feels weird. Pamela's head in the fridge is pretty cool though. It's a nice little prop actually. You know what you did moment as Jason enacts his revenge. And yeah, in the opening, Jason got his revenge already. So now what? I guess he's just gonna be guardian of the lake. Now the film jumped 5 years, so timeline-wise, we're at, what, 1984-ish? The movie came out in 1981. So yeah, the movies don't take place the year they're released, although they sure as hell look like they do. But I digress. We've got time skips and new kids. We've got a decent lot here. You've got your horny couple, the goofball, the cripple. Oh hey, this movie has diversity in it. Nice. It also goes to show that this film does have a larger crowd in it. Does this mean a larger set of kills this time? No. No, it doesn't. We have Paul, the guy opening the camp again, basically, training the counselors before they bring the kids in, which won't happen for many films. Alongside Paul is his assistant, Jenny. So we've got a nice assortment of characters here, all decently likable, except this guy. He creeps the hell out of me. The campfire scene here is all the evidence I need to ensure that this movie is better than the first. Telling the ghost story of Jason around the fire to all these frightened youths, building up the legend of Jason. It's an iconic monologue. No breaks for cheap comedic lines. Just the ambience of the woods, the fire crackling as Paul informs him of factual statements to develop into the legend of Camp Blood. And this is just plainly a well-structured scene, broken by a jump scare that isn't just for the audience, but it actually has a purpose on screen. A fun little scare for the counselors set up by Paul. Part 2 gets too much shit for having great moments like these. Ah, damn, they got Ralph. The movie does have its slower and more tender moments. You've got the constant voyeuristic stalking, watching these two run to fiddle with each other knowing something is in the woods. And it's a cop. A cop who actually finds Jason's little shack. And look at that. Jason built himself a little, shack. And Jason kills the cop too, so there goes help. 45 minutes in, the movie really enters its final act. Almost all the counselors leave to go drinking and be irresponsible, which ironically is going to save their lives, while a select few, the characters that actually have names, are left behind.
Giggity.
Here's another one for the counter. I'm just saying, there's not a lot of nudity so far for a movie with that heavy of stereotype. God damn! Well, everyone, this is what people start to die, and it's mostly throat slashes in this one. Upside down throat slash, probably off-screen throat slash, and everyone else is getting horny, so machete in the face for Mark, who,
I don't intend to be in this thing the rest of my life.
Sorry, bud. Cool as shit death, though. These two get penetrated with a spear while they, this girl interrupts Jason's nap. Look at this look at this dumbass cut one eye hole out. I think the other eye still works. All the while this is happening, Ginny, Paul, and Goofball talk about the previous events. And Ginny again puts in a very interesting, half-drunken dialogue about Jason. She is a studying psychiatrist and attempts to offer some analysis, which either the guys just brush off as nonsense or are just uncomfortable by the subject. Paul and Ginny return to everyone dead, and then we get a nice 15-minute escape sequence. Hey, and Paul isn't completely useless here either. And look at Ginny whipping out the chainsaw on Jason. One of the rare times we'll see fear in his eyes. But this is before we really get into the supernatural aspects. Here, Jason is just kind of feral, mentally unstable forest man. Jason gets all kinds of fucked up in this movie. Anyway, Ginny's analysis of Jason actually saves her in the end, realizing Jason's connection with his mother. She utilizes that to confuse him, proving herself again to be one of the most useful characters in the entire franchise. Paul and Ginny work together to take out Jason, and the dog survives. Happy endings for... Ah, shit. Man, Jason had rocker hair. At the end of the film, Ginny survives, but her mind is shattered and, where's Paul? What the hell happened to Paul? The more I revisit part 2, I definitely find it more enjoyable than 1. 1 had better kills than Tom Savini, for sure, but 2 just kind of feels like a better movie. It utilized the camp setting a bit better, and the characters here are just a bit more memorable. Ginny and Paul have a fun dynamic.
This thing better start.
You fixed it.
I know, that's what worries me.
And the dialogue is a bit more snappy. Jason, well, isn't at his peak yet, but controversial as it may be, was a good addition. And he's just this guy who wants to worship his mom's head. You got all these damn teenagers with their sex, drugs, and rock and roll in his backyard. Better pacing and better suspense building. And the ending still slaps. The franchise hasn't peaked yet, but this is a solid ranking for sure. Now for part 3. Ah, shit. You know, I used to love this one a lot when I was a kid. Now that I think about it, that's a weird statement to make. Definitely was watching these movies way too young. Anyway, this one was important because it's when Jason got his hockey mask. As a kid, I didn't care about part 2 because I didn't find Proto-Jason to be that interesting, but watching part 3 again as an adult, it's not grand. As much as it does pain me to say, a big thing about this movie, and another reason why I liked it so much as a kid, was because it was in 3D, and it was meant to be watched in 3D. Eventually it came out on DVD with a 3D version that had those glasses you could wear, and it worked for the most part, but now, The Blu-ray, you have to have a specific player just to watch? All I needed back then was the fucking glasses. What do you mean? I can't watch the remastered 3D version, so I have to watch the 2D version. The quality of the 2D version just might be the worst quality of all of these films. Not to mention, there is a dirt spot on the lens for more than half the movie. It feels flat at times, and then it feels like that really disgusting kaleidoscope effect that many modern cinematographers are trying to use these days that just makes depth of field non-existent and creates a blurry image. So those are some of the visual issues. Part 3 came out in 1982, a year after the previous film. This is where it was really becoming that sort of annual event. And this one, timeline-wise, actually takes place right after the last film quite literally ended. In fact, this movie was supposed to continue Jenny's story, seeing her with PTSD after the last film, but due to several factors, the actress Amy Steele declined to return, so they kinda just had to shit something out. So here, we have a group of friends camping right next to Crystal Lake. And this is where they started filming in California, so bye-bye summer camp vibes. And hello, California sets. This was the first 3D film Paramount had made since 1956. So they were experimenting with the technology here, and it shows. Because of the difficulty in filming in 3D, it quickly turned to the point of setting up shots, and doing takes was becoming far too extensive. They didn't even really care about the line delivery anymore.
That's an eyeball!
It was about making the 3D gimmick work for shots. This movie also opens with a 6-minute recap that ends on this text that pops up out of the screen, and disco music. You know what? I don't care. This is a bop. I feel like it really introduces that transition of the film's self-awareness to its own absurdities. I make sure this song is on the Halloween party playlist. After the intro, there's a not very happy couple arguing as the man shoves a stick in my face. I do feel kind of bad for the guy. He gets berated, and he just likes his animals, man. Look at the bunny. And a 3D snake, where you can see the strings? I mean, the blurriness and the dirt on the film kind of mask it. It looks like a snake on a fishing line. I love how this guy has an emergency bottle of whiskey under his toilet. That's disgusting, but it's also really funny. What a miserable guy. So yeah, we're going full quirky with the characters at this point in the series. So Jason, of course, kills these two, and is it just me, or is he much taller in this one? We get it. So, the new group of youths here, the horny couple and the pushing 40-year-old hippies. Standouts here is Shelley, who is not the suavest guy. He's no Casanova, and he likes to pull scary pranks and be rather annoying. His friends try to play matchmaker with him and Catherine Parks. Lucky bastard. What are you, Scooby-Doo? Watch the damn road. This movie has its own crazy Ralph guy who's just here for this one scene. I think I might like him more than Ralph, to be honest. The film's protagonist is Chris Higgins, who used to live up here in Crystal Lake. There she reunites with her dad. I mean, boyfriend? Alright. Shelley pisses everyone off with his pranks and tries to make good with Vera, accompanying them to the convenience store where bikers antagonize them. Sure. Shelley's dumbass pisses off the bikers, which is going to keep them further involved for the plot. The bikers steal their gas and plan to burn down the barn. I'm sure these events definitely won't be important later. And then Biker Lady, who might be on drugs, goes around the barn acting like everything is just so magical and wonderful. That's a shoe. And then Jason kills them. I kind of like the pin on the pitchfork. That's pretty cool. Chris informs Rick of her trauma, and I'm still kind of confused about it. This is a very controversial topic amongst the Friday the 13th community, but yeah, this girl was assaulted by Jason, and it's implied that it might have been sexual. And the original concept of the character was going to be a full-on explicit rape scene. Now, the film wants you to think that. It's not in character for Jason. And listen, I'm not going all Andor on you here. I'm just saying that Jason hates sex. I get it. He's still this feral forest man here, but like, he died because of sex. He hates sex, and he kills people when he sees them having sex. I don't think it's out of jealousy or curiosity, and I realize Jason didn't watch people having sex while he drowned. It just plays into his trauma. His major motivation is killing immoral teenagers. So, I don't know. There's a couple reasons that this is in the script. The main thing is because they couldn't get Jenny back. They couldn't get Jenny back, but they wanted that trauma element, that PTSD element of a character encountering Jason and surviving. So they give it to Chris and let your mind run rampant with whatever happened during the blackout. It feels like a cheap excuse to force elements that they wanted in a storyline. They're trying to make this character comparable to other trauma-surviving final girls, and it's just not there. In fact, there is a character analysis on Chris's inability to engage in sexual activity or her struggle with intimate relationships because of her trauma, which is fine on its own right for her as a character. But connecting that trauma, that specific trauma, to Jason, you know, I think the real question we should be asking ourselves, why am I making analysis on a Friday the 13th film? Well, it's about an hour into the movie, so Jason's got 30 minutes to start killing people. He kills Shelly and takes the iconic hockey mask, which he dons while performing the coolest kill of this film. Taking out poor Andy during his handstand. What a vulnerable state to die in.
Giggity.
And then his pregnant girlfriend is killed reading a Fangora article about Godzilla. Does that count for 2 for Jason? Hippie A and Hippie B are killed off abysmally, and the douchebag Rick gets his eye popped out, which is to the damn 3D effect, leaving a 20-minute duel between Chris and Jason. And it is one of the better final duels between characters in these movies. Not gonna lie either, Jason running is a terrifying concept. I think I would just curl into a ball and give up at that point. I also gotta give credit to the actress Stana Kimmel, who wanted to do her own stunts. Most famous is her dropping from this beam almost 20 feet above ground several times for different takes. She does kill Jason, but unfortunately that's not enough to conquer her trauma, and her mind is shattered with a never-ending nightmare of Jason. It's actually a chilling shot. Something about creatures and windows from far away freaks me out. Part 3 is a weird one. The whole 3D gimmick is definitely of its time, a marketing ploy, and it was effective as this sold absurdly well in the theater. This was the 3rd best box office attendance for the series, and even dethroned E.T. The characters stood out well enough, but they're mostly unlikable oddballs in this one. And the effects feel a lot cheaper than the previous 2, again, because of the 3D stuff. Yeah, it's going there. Now the good news, Part 4 is one of the best ones.
I can't believe he did this.
I get it.
There's crucial plot points in Part 4.
Part 4 actually isn't labeled as such, it's simply titled The Final Chapter. Yeah, the studio was already feeling the fatigue here, and they didn't really know how many more times they could make the same movie over again. They wanted to close it off by giving it one final bout. This aspect alone attracted the man himself, Tom Savini, to come back into the fold, in the mindset of, I created this, I should be the one to kill it. The poor guy thought they meant it this time too. There's actually a lot of interesting internal drama behind this. Paramount was embarrassed by these movies, but they were not embarrassed of the money that they made. But the slasher genre was starting to fade out here. A big push for making a 4th film, because the producer, Frank Mancuso Jr., was growing a disdain for the franchise when he felt that these movies were treated poorly even though they made a lot of money. You also have to keep in mind that this movie came out in 1984. Makes 1983 the first gap year of the series. In case you're unaware, 1984 is one of the greatest years for film. Last year would have been the 40th anniversary of this movie, and I almost dedicated a video for it during our horror-thon, but I couldn't quite fit it in the schedule, and instead chose to dedicate to the film that truly did revitalize the slasher genre. This title was directed by Joseph Zito, and written by Barney Cohen, although that's another whole crazy behind-the-scenes drama, meaning that Savini is still the only one from the original film involved with this one. The story takes place very shortly after the previous film, meaning that 2, 3, and 4 all take place basically within the same time window, But now we've actually caught up to the year in the timeline. Jason has been defeated by Chris, and the authorities take his body to the morgue to be examined. These two people were going to have sex right in front of Jason's corpse. That's like putting extra salt on his trauma wounds right there. Well, Jason gets his and somehow makes it back home. It is always fun to see Jason taken out of his environment and see how he operates in new locations, even if this is a little Halloween 2-ish. While we do still have a group of teens in a car going somewhere, we also have the Jarvis family. Recently divorced Tracy living in his house at Crystal Lake with her teenage daughter Trish and 12-year-old son Tommy Jarvis, played by 80s child icon Corey Feldman. They live next door to a cabin being rented by the film's group of youths, who aren't really that interesting except for these two. Especially Crispin fucking Glover. He is such a damn weirdo in this movie, and has brought some of the most quotable lines in the franchise.
God, I'm horny.
Oh, no. No, we have no suits.
Good.
Where's that corkscrew, that fancy corkscrew for the wine bottle? Ted?
Honestly, this and the next two Friday films are perhaps the most quotable ones. The Jarvis family is definitely the more interesting addition here. This is the first time we've had a child in the franchise, let alone one that is a main protagonist alongside his sister. There's a lot of tenderness with them that we haven't seen much of in the previous installments, and it makes you care about them more when Jason attacks. Tommy is rather reclusive, but definitely competent. With their father out of the picture, he seems to kind of try and take over those quote-unquote fatherly responsibilities. He's good at fixing and building things, especially these monster masks and props. An obvious nod to Tom Savini himself. But he also reminds me of the kid from Salem's Lot. We can also read this as a coping mechanism for the child going through this divorce. I know, I'm surprised how much I can read into these movies too. On the teen side, they run into these random twins, and they bring in some sexual drama to the group. They keep interfering with the girls' boyfriends. I don't know, everyone here isn't really that great of a person. The lake scene is going to drive this counter up like crazy.
The biggest thing for me was boobies. Giggity, 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 giggity.
This scene alone has actually been the most nudity so far in the movies. Tommy and Trish run into Rob, who we later find out is the brother of Sandra. Now, don't worry. Don't worry if you don't remember who that is, because 80% of the people watching this don't either.
I did not connect that character with someone who had died the same day or the day before or a few days before. So I assumed Rob had been searching for a longer time than it turns out he was actually searching.
But to refresh your memory, she's this one from part 2. Rob seems like an important character that might actually do something later. Unfortunately, he's not. But he does have some bonding here with the Jarvis family. It kind of does suck when he dies. Especially for Tommy, he seems like the first person in a while he could relate with outside of the family. What a dork. I love it. I love him. I love everything about this scene. This is cinema mastery right here. Just think, in a year from this movie, he'll be Marty McFly's dad. Let that shit sink in. Well, the film's reached the final act, and it's time to start killing.
Giggity.
Jealous girlfriend gets killed on a raft, and careless boyfriend gets a harpoon in the dick. That's why you don't cheat, kids, or else Jason's gonna castrate ya. It's actually a really interesting camera trick here. For most of the previous films, moving camera means POV shot from the killer's perspective. But here, not so much. We see Jason killing Terry as she's getting on her bike through some shadow work here, but the camera is still moving towards the house. Sadly, Mrs. Jarvis is killed as well, leading the siblings to find Rob. Surely this guy was built up to be the hero to save them, right? Shit.
Giggity.
Ted! Hey, Ted, where the hell's corkscrew?
You have no idea how many times I look for an opportunity to quote this. Wasn't he just inside before this? What? Jason is something else. He went back outside and climbed all the way up just to pull her out from the window outside? I love Jason. Ted also does a great job of playing someone blitzed out of their mind without overdoing it. He's just sitting there giggling at this vintage stag film with glaze over his eyes.
Giggity.
And so I thought, wouldn't that be interesting to actually be stoned on camera? So I go to my trailer and I get stoned.
Jason kills the rest of the kids off in this spectacular Savini fashion. Now it's just the Jarvises and Rob. And that is the most flimsy front door I've ever seen in my life. Jason could knock on it softly and it would fall apart. Oh, that works too. Damn, going for 2 here. Going for 3! Tommy, being a horror nerd and studying Jason through some newspapers, decides to pull a Jenny and try to use some psychological warfare on him, pretending to be him as a child. It works. And this has been a very rough night for Jason. Lost all of his hair, too. Tommy takes down Jason and opens their cycle of war for the next several films. They give us a little thriller-style tease here at the end to imply that maybe Jason's curse isn't fully over. Man, I love this movie. Objectively, it has loads of flaws, sure. But this feels like the first Friday movie to both utilize all of the tropes, balance them with cheese, and still try to be a movie. Like, they really wanted to try with this one. And it's just so much fun. It's the end of the classic, if you will, era of the Friday the 13th films. And yet it still feels like they're trying to figure it out. I still think this is one of the best in the series. And also, oddly enough, this might be my favorite score for the films alongside 6. Just the timing and the stings, the ambience. It's really, really nice in this film.
Jesus Christmas! Holy Jesus, goddamn!
I have no regrets putting this one here. Okay, now, oh boy, here we go. A lot of you might be shocked or upset at what I have to say, and I realize this might be one of the most controversial takes I've ever made on this channel. I kind of like Part 5. Let's be real here. These are all not great movies, and most of this franchise is just which of the movies entertains you more than the other. And man, this movie cracks me up. I don't enjoy this the way it's meant to be enjoyed, but there's a lot of cool stuff here. So immediately the first problem is this movie exists. Part 4 was supposed to be the final chapter. Not even a year later, March 1985, they made a sequel. So Part 5 is called A New Beginning with the tagline, "If Jason still haunts you, you're not alone." Pretty much covers what they're going for with this movie. And there was quite a bit of secrecy in the creation of this one. Most of the cast didn't actually know that it was a Friday the 13th film. They were told it was something else with a different title. John Shepard, who plays older Tommy Jarvis, actually committed to this role and spent some time volunteering at a mental hospital to better understand playing the mentally unstable Tommy here. And he was actually bummed when he found out what this was. This film was directed by Danny Steinman, who is known for making pornography. Interesting mix with a franchise already seen by certain holders of a particular traditional value system would see these films the same as pornography, like that Bruce Campbell quote I mentioned back in the intro. And yeah, they got a porn director for this one. And apparently it was the most insane production of a Friday film. Everybody was doped up like crazy. An absurd, coked out production. And there was quite a bit of sexual content that was cut and trimmed. Apparently, they borderline shot a porn scene in the woods with the actress whose real name is Debbie Sue Voorhees. And yes, that is how she got the role. And I feel like that goes to a major issue of this film that I'll crack down in the conclusion. Let's talk about the movie now. So now we jump another 5 years into the future. So it's 1989 or 1990. Tommy is 17 and has been institutionalized. Trish is... I don't know where the hell she is. Some say she cut ties with Tommy after he went crazy over Jason, which seems kind of out of character for her, but they just had to write her off, I guess. On that note, where is Paul? There's an opening nightmare of Tommy back as Corey Feldman, which was filmed in Corey Feldman's backyard on his one day off from Goonies.
Unfortunately, Spielberg fucked up all our plans. because he decided he wanted me in a couple films. I was forced, quite begrudgingly, to participate in a little film called Goonies and not participate, as I would have liked, in the full version of Friday the 13th Part 5.
Seeing his still pursuing torment of Jason. Tommy, after bouncing from hospital to hospital, is sent to a halfway house full of wayward and troubled youths. Here we get a new crowd of teens, full of society's worst outcast. You got the stutterer.
I wanna make love with you.
Aren't you glad I didn't say 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 banana?
The horny, and the horny again. The goth, Joey, and what's wrong with Robin? I mean, she seems kind of level-headed to me. Even worse are the neighbors Ethel and her son, who is the same age as her. I thought this was Randy Quaid for a moment, and I didn't mean as Cousin Eddie, I just meant Randy Quaid. They are absolutely the worst part of this movie. They're loud and obnoxious, and although Ethel's dirty mouth makes for some fun quotes,
You big dildo.
they make me cringe looking back on this movie, and they serve no purpose. No purpose other than being unlikable. They open up as being antagonistic to the halfway house and do absolutely nothing with that. They throw a fit in the beginning, and Big Dildo attacks Tommy, and Ethel makes stew.
Ain't I make the best goddamn stew in the whole wide world?
Best goddamn stew in the whole wide world, man.
Ugh. I just don't understand what their purpose is. Are they supposed to be funny characters? Also in the house is Matt, who runs it with his assistant Pam. So here's the film's Steve and Alice, or Paul and Ginny. Oh god, I'm learning their names. So Tommy has trust issues. He was already showing signs of reclusiveness in part 4, so it's not unbelievable that all the trauma from the event and his already vulnerable state would send him this route. They wanted to still keep some seriousness with this character and to show us what surviving an encounter with Jason does to someone. And we never really got to fully see that with the other survivors because they either went insane or were killed within the following film. And I like the character arc he goes through in these films, even though 6 is a whole separate beast. Tommy does relate with Reggie the Reckless, whose grandfather works as the cook for the kids. Reggie kind of mirrors young Tommy, but with a lot more social skills and spark to him. But there still seems to be a loneliness to Reggie. And, well, the two can connect on that, and the film doesn't play with that as much as they should have. Instead, we got Ethel.
You big dildo.
I'm serious when saying that this movie could have had a much better working narrative if it didn't derail so much. The first death isn't by Jason, and I like that. Here we have Joey, who's like Shelly. He has a candy bar in every fucking pocket and has chocolate all over his face. Joey isn't all that bright, but he's harmless. Just don't let him near the laundry.
Forget it, Vic. Just forget it. But I think you're really out of line.
Joey getting killed by Vic is pretty sad. There's no spooky monster man here. It's just an unfortunate situation between two mentally unstable parties, which is also witnessed by the others.
Bunch of pussies.
And make sure you remember this guy, because I sure as hell didn't the first time I watched this. The movie does try to work on some family connections themes here, and there's a scene here where Violet still sets a plate for Joey, and everyone just starts to fall apart because of it. But there's some familial connections here. And then Eddie teases Tommy, and learns real fast what a unit he turned into. I love how Tommy is just a beast in this movie. He flipped that dude on the table and started beating his ass. You know damn well we deserve a fight with Jason and Tommy. He has been building himself up for this. I don't know how. Maybe they have a gym in those hospitals he's been at, fighting lessons there. I don't know, but I love it. And then back to the unlikable but quotable things of the movie. These two greasers get killed because Screen time. I don't remember this part of The Outsiders.
I gotta take a crap. Crap my ass!
This guy getting a flare in the mouth, though, is pretty damn cool. Unfortunately, they cut away from the good parts. Bro definitely did a bump before walking on the set.
I'm gonna kick your ass, kick your ass. Come on now. Come on, everybody, same starting. Come on, motherfucker. Fix the fucking car. Come on.
This had to be some censorship, too, because look at that zoom in away from the gore. What the hell was that? Even worse is this scene at the diner. I thought this guy was picking up his daughter from work, but they're a couple, I think, who are definitely zoinked.
It's showtime!
Giggity. The window is open, you... Look, I get the joke is that people are dumb in these movies. Truthfully, most of them are caught with their pants down. Literally. Jason, or Pamela, kill people when they're vulnerable. It's not as much of a discussion of them being stupid as it is them genuinely not having time to react. This woman had all the goddamn time in the world to escape. Jason pulls a Michael Myers for Tommy's trauma. I like this scene here with the sheriff and the mayor because no one acts like an actual human being. I think this guy is fried too.
I know who it is.
What?
I know who it is.
Eddie and Debbie Sue Voorhees do the stanky in the woods after getting lit up while this gross hobo guy watches. Not entirely sure what his purpose in this movie was either.
Giggity. Giggity.
Debbie Sue gets an iconic death with garden shears in the eyes. A lot of eye trauma in this movie too. Back home, Reggie learns his older brother is in the area, so Pam decides to take Reggie to see Demon, and brings Tommy along too so he can stand outside. Demon is played by Miguel Nunez Jr. I freaking adore him.
Well, here's a clue. Purple is a fall color. It's the middle of May.
And there is a really sweet moment here between Demon and his brother, which already makes me care more about them than the other two who died right before this.
It's them damn enchiladas.
I quote that one a lot too.
Ooh, baby. Ooh, baby. Ooh, baby.
Demon deserved better, man. Demon deserved better. Shut the fuck up! Back at the house, Matt and Reggie's grandfather are missing, so Pam leaves to find them, leaving the kids alone. Jake tries to riz Robin while watching A Place in the Sun, Paramount film. The poor kid is laughed at and tries to go after Violet next, which ends up having him dying before dealing with any of that rejection.
Giggity.
Violet gives us her iconic dancing to Man with No Life in His Eyes, another song that will always be on my Halloween playlist. And all the kids are dead, except Reggie, who finds their corpses, decorated like something Michael Myers would do. This leads to a big clumsy chase in the barn. Another damn barn. And it's finally time. The epic battle between Tommy Jarvis and Jason. Oh man, I cannot wait for... Are you shitting on me right now? All of that build-up just for him to do nothing in the finale! Well, he gets the last blow in, at least. And the end reveal that pissed off everyone. The killer is not Jason. Jason's still dead, hence the mask having blue marks on it instead of red, because they're not the same. He's also wearing a mask under the mask, which was either already cut open or exploded for the end reveal of Roy. Yeah, that guy. Apparently Joey was his son that he didn't care for enough to stay with, but still kept tabs. Yeah, that's underwhelming. Roy doesn't leave much of a mark. It's not really much of a whodunit, the film. And it never really tries to make you think that maybe it was Tommy either. That said, the idea of a copycat killer, just to show the power of the Jason curse, isn't a bad idea itself. Hell, copycat killers are a real thing. I wouldn't be surprised if someone tried to emulate Jason in real life. It seems like that's the biggest fear people have with these movies, is that those watching it will try to emulate it. Doing something different isn't inherently a bad thing. In fact, it's what these movies needed desperately, even if people are still watching them for these tropes. You gotta be really delicate with making change though, or else people will hate it more than anything. They absolutely threw away Tommy with this Halloween 4 ending, and yes, I realize this predates Halloween 4. I'm just using that as an example. If anything, they're trying to set up the idea of Tommy being the next Jason in the next film. Thank God they scrapped that. I really hate that because it's too easy. You either end it like you did at 4, or you continue his journey. Let him have character progression. Let him have an arc. I don't hate this movie like most people do. I actually really like a lot about it, but there is still a lot of bad to it as well, and unfortunately overwhelms much of the good. Problem with this movie for me, it had the potential to be better. There was potential to work with here. The halfway house premise, working in some actual character drama here, there was something that could have been more than what we got. I don't agree with all of the hate that it gets. Friday the 13th, Part 6. Jason Lives. Yeah, that title should tell you everything about the reception of the previous film. They were gonna make Tommy the villain this time following the ending of Part 5, but people were so pissed that Jason wasn't in that one that they had to bring him back. The ending of the previous film was just a dream within a dream for Tommy. The original opening of this film would have killed off Reggie and Pam.
They wanted to kill me off in Part 6, but we said, nope, not doing that to us.
Part 6 had the series handed off to Tom McLoughlin, a horror director also known to have a sense of humor. This guy was a big fan of the classics, Universal horror, and other gothic horror and literature, all of which is present in this film. But it was that sense of humor of his that brought an interesting usage of self-awareness and satirizing within the film of what these movies are.
Some folks have a strange idea of entertainment.
Shepard, who played Tommy in the previous, wasn't very keen on returning to the sequel. The role went to Tom Matthews, who had previously played in The Return of the Living Dead. McLoughlin was given a lot of freedom. There's also one specific rule given to him by the producer that he had to follow. The film had to have a pretty blonde lead. Which brings in Jennifer Cooke, who had been in V, a series I very, very much need to do a video on one day. Specifically the miniseries. Something funny about this movie is that while these films are usually shredded by censorship in the editing room, this one was actually complained about needing more gore and more death. Originally it was going to have 13 deaths, a little joke there, but that was not enough for the executives. This is also the only Friday film with no nudity, so we'll let that counter take a rest.
Giggity.
Jason Lives released summer of 1986. The film, however, takes place a year after the previous, so timeline-wise, it's 1990-ish. The gothic influence is immediately present for us. Fog in the woods reminiscent of Wolfman, the graveyard that looks incredible, thunder, the sets, the atmosphere, Jason's corpse, which I guess wasn't cremated. Everything here is top-notch. As much as some might not like to hear it, this is the first one to really feel like a movie. Now, Tommy broke into the graveyard to destroy Jason's remains, but his dumbass instead brings him back to life in the good old Frankenstein way, shoving a giant metal rod into his corpse and then lightning bringing him back. I do hate this shot of Jason's eye though, because it looks too human. Here we're getting to where Jason really is a supernatural being. Now the lore is going to shift more towards him being this immortal beast, truly worthy of a campfire legend. Jason looks awesome here. Just the lurking corpse slowly approaching Tommy. Great comedic work here as well. Tommy's friend is killed and he escapes to the police. That was the opening sequence. No recap, no dull start. This is movie 6. They know what we want, and they throw us right into the action. The tone is there. Tommy's new character is introduced easy enough for us to understand what's going on and what his motivations are. And it's just visually a step up above anything we've seen before in this franchise. A lot of those movies just look so flat, and we excuse the first couple for their cheapness. These movies are starting to get bigger budgets as they went along, but the studio still wanted to be cheap and sleazy to be box office winners. Now we've finally got a movie here from someone who really gives a shit. Look at that goofy ass James Bond opening. The downside is Part 5 did so bad, people started to lose interest, and It'd be hard to make those numbers back. The police think that Tommy is full of shit and lock him up. In their defense, he is someone who escaped his institution, so fair. 2 camp counselors are looking for the now renamed Crystal Lake when they run into resurrected Jason. This is actually the director's wife right here, Nancy, who also drops us some meta humor here.
Because I've seen enough horror movies to know any weirdo wearing a mask is never friendly.
And this is all for the fun of the audience.
Stay cool, you ain't dirty Harry, now stop it!
This type of humor wouldn't work in, say, Halloween. Kinda does for Nightmare. But for a franchise as dry as Friday, it was a breath of fresh air. Another great thing about this film is the Jason screen time. We see Jason a lot in this movie, and they treat him like an idol. Many cases caught him like a damn superhero. No need for those cheap POV shots here. No, we get Jason. He's back, and he's here to kick ass. I love how Jason's kind of like a guardian here. He's giving warning shots. He could have just killed them so many times earlier, and it leaves you wondering, when is he gonna do it? We know he can. We know he will. So when's he gonna do it? The next morning, Tommy meets Megan, the sheriff's daughter. You about a Ted Bundy-ass girl, aren't you? Megan is also working at the camp with the other group of youths that, they're there. This is the first movie where we actually see kids at the camp, and they're great.
If this is as exciting as it gets, we're in big trouble, dude.
So, what were you gonna be when you grew up?
6 movies in, and the camp finally made it far enough to open. Unfortunately, though, for the film, this scene exists.
Your instinct to eat is stronger than your instinct to win. You're a real ass, you know that? Better than being all ass.
There's actually a different actor here playing Jason, Dan Bradley, who the producer didn't like and had him replaced with CJ Graham for the rest of the film. And there are different vibes in their stunt acting. But overall, this whole scene just isn't very funny. It feels way over the top comparatively to the rest of the film.
Dumb broad! She tricked me! She should have stayed in the kitchen where she belongs!
It's almost like it belongs more in an Ernest movie. Now I want Ernest meets Jason.
Hey!
The best purpose this scene serves in the film is to show that people have grown comfortable enough to play in the woods again, but that comfort is about to go away. This whole section of kills was also added on later because they needed more attacks in the film, which given its runtime is pretty understandable. It's an interesting approach to also make most of these teens likable. I mean, they don't really do much except show that they do care for the kids, so what kind of bad for them? Not so much for the RV gang. For some reason, I have a hard time buying Jason could fit in there. Alice Cooper's Teenage Frankenstein playing, badass song. Cooper also provided the theme for this film, Man Behind the Mask. You know, I actually saw Cooper in concert a couple of years ago as a celebration gift for my graduation at film school. The man's over 70 years old and still puts on a hell of a show. Megan links up with Tommy to help in his battle against Jason. Megan, however, is completely irresponsible.
That's what I want.
We as the audience know Tommy is innocent, but there's a lot of reasons for characters within the narrative to not believe him. He's the most likely case, and she's gonna team up like that? Oh yeah, we have a whole car chase scene here. A Friday the 13th movie has a car chase. You know, sometimes Jason is chasing cars, but now we got Smokey and the Bandit over here running away from the police. There's a lot of camera work for these types of movies. It's not that Jason doesn't kill kids, it's just that some kids are more innocent than others. The director excuses this here as she's saved because she prayed. Like how he tried to incorporate a lot of that stuff into this movie, and a good bit didn't make it in. Actually, when did Tommy learn how to drive? Wasn't he hospitalized all those years?
Maybe someone around here gave him lessons.
This is the first time the cops tried to be helpful. Unfortunately, they all get Jason. The sheriff got the worst of it. Eek. Jason and Tommy finally have their long-awaited battle. I can't wait to see this epic... Oh.
That's it. Come on, maggot head. Come on. Come on, maggot head. Come on, you pussy.
Tommy uses reverse Dracula theory and figures, I'll lift this conveniently light rock and lock Jason down there where he belongs. There's a lot of great props based off of the underwater Jason, including a whole statue in Minnesota. So it's a happy ending. But this is the last we'll see of Tommy and the end of his 3-film arc. There are several different endings for this film, one of which included bringing in Jason's father, which would have taken care of some continuity errors between films, but the studio didn't want to introduce Elias because that meant they'd have to write more lore for him in the next one. This is easily one of the best Jason films, arguably the best one. This is the movie that people think this franchise is. With the exception of no nudity, you've got Jason being an absolute tank, glorified in the spotlight. Great kills, great effects, and perhaps the best cinematography in the entire series. Great direction, fun and snappy dialogue.
Does he think I'm a farthead?
Pretty good screenplay all around for the series, all of which was handled by the director. Yeah, there's very few movies in the series that are written and directed by the same person. This is a fan favorite for a reason, and the usage of meta humor, breaking the fourth wall alongside Return of the Living Dead is something we see a lot in forthcoming horror films, most notably Scream.
I'll be right back!
Plain and simply, this is a fun movie, and that's what the franchise really needed. When these try to be serious horror films, they can fall under in that department, and people don't see them for that. They go in for the final acts to see the blood, the gore, and the boobs. The movie wasn't entirely dependent on that because it was actually entertaining from start to finish, with this being the only real slowdown.
She should have stayed in the kitchen where she belongs!
This showed that you can actually make a good movie with this property, and I really hope they follow through. Anyway, yeah, no regrets here. Not just as a Friday film, but as an iconic 80s horror flick. Unfortunately, most people won't get this far into the series because it is the 6th one, and if they didn't like the first couple, probably aren't going to bother going that deep into the series. Part 7, Carrie vs. Jason. I mean, The New Blood. This film was made with the intention of being better than the previous, which is awesome in theory. The last film was the best we'd seen so far, so hell yeah, let's go even bigger.
Basically, I said, why? Didn't they just make 6 of them? And I think it's because I didn't want to do it ultimately. I got the job because I did want to push it in a slightly new direction.
This was also the first whispers of bringing Freddy and Jason together on screen. But there were still legal issues with the properties belonging to different studios, and well, we've got a lot of years until that concept finally comes together. But the studio really wanted a crossover. They wanted a versus film to Godzilla Jason. Friday wasn't doing too hot in the box office, regardless of the increase of quality in the films. After Part 5 bummed people out and Freddy was the new guy, those movies were doing double in the box office. They were doing great. There was a competition going on between these two properties. And so the idea of Jason versus Carrie came about. I'm not joking, that really was an idea. And it would be an interesting spin on the final girl. There's always a final girl, but what if she too had superpowers and can go against Jason? Paramount wanted this movie to win an Oscar. Paramount wanted this movie to be of be of higher quality.
And the winner is The Last Emperor, Jeremy Thomas, producer. I know how it feels to be a loser. I know you got your tux on and you feel real stupid right now.
Well, let's just take a look at how this turned out. The movie opens on another recap and a narration.
A death curse. Jason Voorhees' curse.
Well, the recap this time is only about 3 minutes long, at least. The story opens with young Tina, the Carrie of the film. Her dad is a drunk, abusive asshole who she accidentally kills with her mind powers, conveniently at Crystal Lake. The story then goes to, well, it says around 7 years after the previous film, so guesstimating this to be around 1997 in the timeline. That's almost a whole decade in the future from when this film was made. Tina here is played by Lar Park Lincoln, who very sadly passed away just a few months ago. As Tina, she is going back to the source of her childhood tragedy, alongside her mother and doctor studying her special abilities. Character I already don't trust. Next door to them is a group of teenagers.
Back to formula.
Per usual, you've got quirks in all of these kids. The lover boy, their nerdy writer guy, shy and less shy, whatever the fuck this guy is. You got a couple, a preppy couple, and a Kelly Bundy wannabe. Wait. Okay, yeah. Married with Children is already out, so I can make that reference. Now, it's Loverboy's cousin's birthday, and they're at a friend's dad's cabin. A lot of apostrophes here. Cabin to throw a surprise party for a cousin. Now, during Tina's testing, the doctor stimulates her abilities by berating her, seeing emotion as the key. In her despair, she tries to bring her dad back, but, her aim was off a little bit. So Jason's here, now played by Kane Hodder. CJ Graham was hoping to come back, basically wanting to be the most identifiable Jason actor, to be the Boris Karloff of Jason. That ended up being Kane Hodder, who undeniably is a great Jason performer. And he actually made a little bit of movie history in this one. We'll discuss that when we get to it. This also might be my favorite Jason design. He's decaying, rotting away. You can see his spine. He looks incredible.
Every scar, every rip, every tear that Jason ever had was in the Jason that we created for part 7.
Sadly for the cousin, his birthday gift is going to be getting Jasoned. He and his girlfriend are killed, and really the most unfortunate thing about this film, it could have been the most respected in the visual effects department, but the effects were so good, and too graphic, that this was one of the most censored. No, I'm pretty sure this was the most censored Friday the 13th film. There's very little remains of everything that was shot, but my God, we could have had a real splatterfest here. But with all the cuts due to censorship, it makes this movie feel like a TV edit. Like you're watching this on a public channel with all the good bits cut out.
The ratings board raped my movie.
And it's a damn shame because Jason gets very creative in this film. And that's literally what people watch these movies for. Well, Tina develops a psychic link with Jason and starts to hallucinate him as well as witnessing his murders. But of course, she's the crazy girl from the loony bin, so no one's gonna listen to her. There's a lot of weird teen drama here. Discount Kelly Bundy likes Loverboy, who likes Tina. She tries to break him up with Tina by making him jealous with the sci-fi nerd, even though he's not already interested. I can't keep up with these damn kids. There's also this random couple in the woods who gets killed, where we do see the famous sleeping bag kill. The teens don't really show as much concern as they should at the missing cousin and just keep the party going, I guess.
Giggity.
Meanwhile, Tina and Loverboy grow a strained romance.
It's a big pink elephant.
And the doctor is very evidently an asshole. The mother encourages Tina to be a teen and try to have a normal life because that's probably what she really needs. It doesn't take long to learn that the doctor does not care about Tina. He just wants to profit off her powers. He also learns that Jason is most likely back, but doesn't do anything about it to warn anyone. Tina runs off and Jason starts killing the teens, all with cutaway kills. Goddamn shame.
Giggity.
And it's not just the kids in danger, as Jason also attacks the doctor and the mom. I genuinely feel bad for the mom getting killed. That really was Tina's whole world right there. Even more so because this absolute dingleberry threw her in the way to save his own life. He goes on the list of top 5 people that deserve to get Jasoned. Now that's satisfying. The rest of the film turns into a long duel between Jason and Tina, which actually is kind of a fun sequence, but it also takes some tension away. Jason's never had to go up against something like this before. Discount Kelly Bundy gets one of the most visually memorable deaths in the film. He's so gnarly and you can see his mouth moving behind the mask. That image of Jason raising the axe up is a very popular marketing piece. Hodder's pretty scary here. Seeing Jason with that fast of reflexes, with his size, that's terrifying. Oh man, he looks so good. Here in the cellar, movie history is made, as Kane Hodder is lit on fire for over 40 seconds, which is record time. In fact, I still think that this is the current record. That's crazy. There's also a whole house explosion. Boom! Yeah. Jason can't die from fire, but that asshole can go right back in the water, I guess. Thanks, Tina's dead dad. So nothing was really accomplished here. He just went back where he started. I don't quite think they got the Academy Award that they were hoping for. And this is a weird movie for me. Visually, it's rather great, but we're also watching the chopped up version. If there was somehow a way we could see the uncut version of this film, I feel like everybody would give it much higher praise. And that's not the fault of the filmmakers. That's the censors. Still, it gets some points for doing something a little different that's not overly jarring. Unfortunately, most of the characters are unlikable or just flat out annoying in this one. Lar Park was great though, and really carried the film alongside Kane Hodder. There are a lot of positives and a lot of negatives too. And I have no idea if this is going to be a controversial take or not, but I still find this film to be very entertaining, and I think one of the better of the worst, so I'm putting it here. "1989. Jason is an established icon. Kids might not have ever seen a Friday film, but they know who he is. He's been parodied, idolized. He was a household name.
You know, working on the streets of New York, did you get a lot of people come up to you, ask for your autograph and stuff like that? Ever think about doing a musical?
And now it was time for him to get his most expensive movie yet in the franchise. A whopping $5 million budget. Lar Park and her husband even had a treatment for it, which would have focused on Tina being a psychologist for troubled youths. So, Dream Warriors? Paramount, for whatever reason, said nah, and they gave the sequel to Rob Hedden, who both wrote and directed this one. And I like the ideas in theory. As aforementioned, it's fun to see Jason out of his environment. We've seen him in the woods doing about all he can. So yeah, bring him to the Big Apple, why not? Maybe he'll fight the Ninja Turtles there. Oh wait, New Line hasn't done that one yet. Hedden originally wanted to have Jason on a boat, like Das Boot, with Jason killing off people during a storm. Then he thought about a movie where Jason was in New York City, exploring all the landmarks and causing mayhem there. That's two whole film ideas right there. So what did Hedden do? He combined both of them into one movie. A movie called Jason Takes Manhattan, which is only about 10-15 minutes of the movie. I think one of the biggest reasons that this gets so much hate is because of how it was marketed. Most of the movie is on a boat. The main reason for this was because filming in Manhattan is expensive. And even with this film's budget, that doesn't quite cut it. I believe they had one night to film in Times Square, which was done on site. A very popular location with a very popular film icon. That must have been something. This is generally one of the most hated films in the series. I must confess, as a child, still weird to say that, I love this movie for two reasons. One, seeing Jason in Times Square, and two, perhaps the most important, Kelly Hu. Yep, that about sums up the positives of this film. Well, and of course, Kane Hodder is great as always. This one opens up with a montage of the dark side of New York. You've got crime, rats, and toxic waste, drug use, Statue of Liberty, nice little irony accompanied by the song The Dark Side of the Night. We move to Crystal Lake where two lovers are killed by Jason on their houseboat.
Giggity.
Their anchor, I guess, awakens Jason with some of the Frankenstein's monster electricity. Whatever, he's back. The man behind the mask. And haha, this guy pulls a prank with the Jason mask just to conveniently give it to Jason, which also has the iconic crack in the corner. Are they just selling replica masks in the stores in this universe? Timeline-wise, this is also only a year-ish after the previous film. This scene sucks, but Jason looks badass. He's all gooey and swampy. Well, the main plot of the film is all these graduating seniors are taking a class trip to Manhattan on a boat from Crystal Lake to the big city. That's quite a big lake.
Stephen King supposedly used it in high school.
We're immediately introduced to the real villain of the film, this dickhead teacher, Charles, who is also the guardian of the protagonist, Rennie, who is deathly afraid of drowning, going on a boat trip. Can't see how those elements are going to come together. Also on the boat is the film's love interest, Sean, whose dad is the captain and expects him to be the next captain as well. Who else is on the boat? We've got Joan Jett wannabe named JJ. Ain't no way. Her name is JJ? Joan Jett? Get the hell out of here. Get out of here with that. She's played by Saffron Henderson, who actually after this, did quite a bit of anime voice acting. I thought that was a bit interesting. She was one of the original Kid Goku and Gohans. Isn't that something? Alongside her is that me? I mean, Camera Boy character. Joan Jett here is actually the first boat victim, pretty much right after her introduction. How's that for an axe? Oh look, the boat even has its own Crazy Ralph. Now the main girl has some kind of trauma with Jason after being told a story about him drowning as a kid. I don't think there's any actual link between them, just what's in her own head. Which is why he doesn't look like Jason, but just some kid. We also have Popular Girl and Kelly Hu playing her follower friend. Find it funny that it's not the other way around. Well, while they're doing drugs, Jason goes around killing people. This Sonic kill is brutal. Popular Girl tries to seduce the teacher and creates a blackmail tape because she just didn't finish her damn project. I don't know, this movie is shit. There's a lot of cool visual stuff on the boat. I don't necessarily think the film looks bad. I think there's some cool compositions here.
Giggity.
Popular Girl gets killed by mirror shards. I'm sure there's something ironic here about vanity. And has it already been 40 minutes? Oh my god. Jason then kills the only people who know how to operate the boat, and I think the other kids who aren't as important. Afterwards, Jason then kills Kelly Hu, god damn it, in this dance floor, but they don't really utilize it that much. They try to do this mirror funhouse effect, I guess, but other than that, he just chokes her. Oh. Camera Boy gets a pretty cool death. His pants light on fire. Oh, damn. Jason got the Stephen King pin in his eye. That's supposed to be his good eye, too. A very small number of survivors escape the ship on this little rowboat, rowing all the way to the city. The entire time, even after the arrival, this asshole is still complaining. Yeah, he's definitely in the top 5 needs to be Jason's list. He did almost drown his niece, after all. Jason seeing the hockey mask billboard is so iconic. It's the image used in the back art of the Blu-ray case. It becomes evident that Jason is not nearly as evil as the city itself once the group are attacked by muggers from the opening sequence. They kidnap Rennie and dope her up. Jason saves her, and we cheer as these guys get it. This is Jason's PSA against drugs, like all the popular icons were doing back in the late 80s and throughout the 90s. Julius then takes on Jason in a fist fight, busting his hands open, and Jason just takes it. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, this sequence is awesome. Iconic moment in the franchise.
Take your best shot.
The remaining survivors are found by the police who get Jason, and Rennie tries to drive the police car. And mind you, she was just drugged. This is a movie. Rennie survives this, the other teacher doesn't. They just left her in the car and it explodes. What kind of reaction is that? Oh yeah, drugs. If you ask me, Charles deserved more, but this is still a pretty foul kill. The rest of the film is Sean and Rennie running from Jason. The subway sequence is pretty neat. Seeing Jason nicely lit in this claustrophobic setting, nobody here wants to help, and I can't entirely blame them because what the hell do you do against that? I do think they killed Jason, but aha, there's still 13 minutes left of the movie. So here's Times Square. I really do like this sequence, not just for Jason being in it, but it is a sort of time capsule. You can see all the old advertisements and such. I got my favorite whiskey up there. And this scene.
Yo, man, it's cool. It's cool, man. It's cool.
You can almost imagine a smirk on his face after that.
There is a maniac trying to kill us.
Welcome to New York.
Ha 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 ha. The guy who gets thrown here is actually the actor who will play Jason in Freddy vs. Jason, as well as doing some extra stunt work in this film too. The finale is in the sewers where Jason gets sludged and... oh boy. And this happens. This really was a movie, wasn't it? Yeah, I didn't really like this one too much. Jason in Times Square is cool. I don't know, this goes here. It's really boring. It's probably the most boring one since 3, which is a damn shame because there was so much potential to work with here. Maybe if they didn't cram 2 different movie ideas into a single movie? I don't know. And this was the last Paramount Friday. It bombed so bad that they gave the rights away to New Line, hoping that they could revive the series. Wish in one hand. Jason Goes to Hell, the final Friday. It's probably been over a decade since I last saw this one. This film was made by Adam Marcus, who is known for Jason Goes to Hell. I haven't met too many people that love this movie, but a good friend of mine does really love it. I definitely remember it being better than it actually was. So Sean S. Cunningham, the guy who created Friday the 13th, and subsequently wasn't a huge fan of what the series had turned into, jumped back into the fold with this one, the first film with his involvement since the original. And this was the result of his return. Well, it was Cunningham who was still pressuring for Freddy vs. Jason. This resulted in New Line getting the rights to Jason Voorhees, but not Friday the 13th. Yeah, so they can't use the title. They don't have the rights to the title. They have the rights to the character Jason. Well, Freddy vs. Jason was still in development hell, so the idea was to make a movie that sort of led into that concept. According to Marcus, Cunningham wanted him to get rid of Jason's mask, though there's debate on how valid these claims are. But that does make sense when you consider what this movie ends up being. Basically, the original concept was going to fully bring in Daddy Voorhees and have him take over Jason's powers, retconning the last couple movies. They even wanted to bring Tommy Jarvis back, but guess what? They didn't have the rights. The writing process for this one was a nightmare. Several rewrites, some involving Jason fighting LA gangs. It was a fustercluck. Eventually, a lifelong fan of the series and recent film school graduate Adam Marcus was put on board with the idea of Jason body hopping. Basically like that movie The Hidden with Kyle MacLachlan. Although Marcus claims to have not seen that movie by the time of making this. No, actually what Marcus wanted to do was connect to the Evil Dead films. I'll explain that a little bit later. The production of this movie was even more of a nightmare. Cunningham and Marcus just did not get along. Marcus was even kicked off of his own set because he was pissed that actress Kari Keegan wouldn't show her jubblies on screen. Maybe there's a reason Marcus doesn't get too much work. Okay, let's talk about this damn movie. For the record, I'm reviewing the uncut version, not the theatrical release. From my understanding, the major difference between the two is just extended frames on the sex and gore scenes. Although that does include one of the top 3 kills in the franchise for sure. I will say that now. The effects in this movie are awesome. The gore, at least, are top notch. It doesn't completely save this from being a bad film, I'm afraid. As for the timeline, I frankly don't even think it matters anymore with the continuity of the New Line films, but this is supposed to be 2003, I think. I do like the opening of the film. It starts with this lone woman driving to Crystal Lake, and it feels suspicious in a way. It's hitting all of the tropes and all the stereotypical beats right in the beginning. Driving to the lake, going there, something's amiss.
Giggity, giggity.
So she showers, she's vulnerable, and Jason's already there. Very early in the film. Jason is played by Kane Hodder, who again is always great, but why is Jason grown so much? When you think of Jason, especially by this point, you think of him being silent, even when he's being beat, unless he's unmasked, or like the early films when he wasn't really that supernatural, he's quiet, which makes him even more unnerving. Hearing him groan here when he gets hit both humanizes him, and it just kind of comes off clumsy and goofy. Whatever, he's about to die. Turns out the whole thing was set up by SWAT. It's about goddamn time they did something. You figure one of the movies would have ended like this already. So they blow the big bastard up. After all these years, they finally kill Jason. Maybe. Nice to see the authorities finally get off their asses and take care of this guy. This title sequence is awful. Is awful. This is just the music. This is the worst in the franchise. This is bad, really bad, and it keeps intercutting with the movie, which makes it comical. Hey, look, there's Kane Hodder himself.
You want nothing but a big old pussy anyway.
I was watching this movie with my girlfriend, and this is when she started to get really disappointed. She'd never seen it before, and for me, it'd been forever. But she was hoping that this movie would be Jason in hell. I can't blame her, because that would be an absurdly stupid and entertaining environment for Jason. Instead, we have a coroner who, while performing an autopsy on Jason, eats his heart, and then is possessed by Jason with this Ghostbusters effect 10 years after that movie. Look, I get it. The franchise already doesn't make a lot of sense. This is a new level of desperate. After that, we get introduced to this reporter and Duke Creighton. Apparently, he was supposed to be an actual character with a backstory, but instead, he's a guy that has all this aura and ultimately does very little in the film. Greatly underutilized for what is perhaps the best part of this movie. He claims to be the only one to know how to stop Jason on the basis of, trust me, bro. Then we move to this diner that's selling Jason burgers. It's kind of funny. With this lovely couple. Duke tries to recruit Aaron Gray in his crusade against Jason.
Why don't you blow me, Chief? Right after your girlfriend there gets through.
His crude remarks earn him some time in the slammer. So there he goes for the next chunk of the movie. Diana talks with Steven, who I guess is the protagonist. This is the Tommy Jarvis replacement, who is not nearly as memorable. This leads into a scene that has really no purpose in the film whatsoever.
Planning on smoking a little dope, having a little premarital sex, and getting slaughtered?
Where he picks up a trio and brings them to Crystal Lake. So she's just third wheeling and is willing to sleep outside, but
Giggity, giggity.
well, they all die, and we do get one of the coolest kills in the series. I'm still not sure what purpose this scene holds. Just needed to have Jason killing in the woods, you know? Except that it's not really Jason. I'm just kidding. They needed to make the runtime for this to be a feature-length film. Afterwards, Jason needs a new body, so he, I suppose Jason likes them smooth.
Come over here and kiss me on my hot mouth.
Oh yeah, Jason's a worm now. So, Night of the Creeps? 36 minutes in here is the female lead, Diana's daughter, Jessica, who had a kid with Steven, and then they separated. And now she's dating the reporter guy, and there's a lot of character drama in this one, huh? Now, Jason really wants to kill Diana, and or put his demon worm in her, but Steven shows up to save the day. Oh, she's dead. And Steven gets blamed for it. Well, that allows us to get some exposition from Duke. I'm not quite sure if I love or hate this scene, but for each piece of information, Duke breaks a finger on Steven's hand. Certainly interesting character work. Here we learn
Jason had a sister.
God damn it. God damn it. Diana is Jason's sister. I didn't think they were that desperate that they had to go use the sister cop-out for no ideas. So Jessica is Jason's half-niece, and now he's gonna want her. And also, the reporter is a bad guy. He took Diana's body and hid it in the Voorhees house? You're telling me this is where Jason grew up? The Voorhees house. Really? This is where we are. Inside the house, Steven finds the Necronomicon from Evil Dead. There was going to be a crossover of Freddy, Jason, and Ash. Originally, this was just a little nod saying that, hey, we like those movies too. Except that the director had different plans, or has them now, retrospectively. I don't know. We'll come back to that. Well, Jason takes over the reporter guy, and then the other guy's body turns into Oopie Goopy. Steven saves Jessica, and she thanks him by leaving him on the road, because she still thinks he killed her mom, with this wonderful music accompanying the scene. Steve lets himself get arrested to save Jess. What? The rest of this movie just has everyone acting like the most unsensible and unrealistic human beings on the planet as they get killed off. Eventually ending with Duke kidnapping the baby to get Jessica's attention. Turns out Jason could only be killed permanently by a family member with a magical dagger. Oh, fucking hell. This movie's awesome. This movie's great. Oh, man. A magical dagger. Worm Jason goes inside of his sister's, and then he's reborn as Kane Hodder Jason with a hockey mask. The magic dagger kills him. And then at the very end, Freddy's glove, played by Kane Hodder, grabs the mask. Now that's actually some hype right there. That made all the kids of the 90s shit their pants when they saw that. You just had to sit through an hour and a half of fanboy fan fiction. That's really the best way to describe this movie the more you think about it. Marcus put the Evil Dead book in there to make up his own backstory of Pamela using it to bring back Jason, making him a deadite. And then it just rips off a bunch of other horror films. Night of the Creeps, The Hidden, Freddy's Dead, Halloween 2, Halloween, The Fly remake. It really just feels like a fan fiction by a horror nerd struggling to come up with an original idea, and then just hodgepodges a whole bunch of other concepts and properties into there. I mean, what else could we throw in the Voorhees house, which alone is a stupid idea? The Lament configuration? A wall of Leatherface's masks? It feels like something you friends would come up with at school on the school bus. This movie is something else. It really is, you know. It has its fans. I mean, I get that. I get that. You know, hell, my girlfriend and I make up 2 of the 4 people on the entire planet that like Part 5, so I get that. I do. But I definitely have more redemptions to pull out of that movie than this one. I'm sorry, I can't with this one. Now, the sort of last film of the main timeline, Friday the 13th, Jason X. X is for 10. Released almost a whopping 10 years later after the previous film. Now, they were quote-unquote still working on Freddy vs. Jason, and Cunningham was growing worried that people weren't going to care anymore about Jason and wanted to have a movie to remind them that, hey guys, he still exists. But then came the question, you know, what the hell is left to do? He made the same movie 5 times, and then a couple of good ones and a couple of weird ones, so what's left? What has Jason not done yet? Space, the final frontier, you know, like Alien. One of the most respected horror films, an intelligently well-crafted masterclass of horror visual narrative storytelling. Jason could accomplish that too. Jason X is a movie that was made. It was directed by James Isaac, who had actually done quite a bit of special effects work, including Return of the Jedi and Gremlins. So here's the thing about Jason X. You're either gonna love it, or you're really gonna hate it. And I can't lie, this movie is entertaining. Although I was a bit sauced on my rewatch, so that probably contributed. I don't have a lot of background knowledge on this one, so we're just gonna jump into it. It starts in 2008, the film came out in 2002. It was actually finished around 2000, 2001, but apparently it was shelved for a little bit. We have the government that has now captured Jason because they can't kill him, so better to lock him up under their control. Plausible. And Jason sure looks like Kane Hodder. This is a very humanized perspective of Jason in this shot, and I'm unaware if we're supposed to feel sorry or scared. David Cronenberg himself shows up and wants Jason to be studied for his impressive cells, and of course, that doesn't go well. That is a lot of hair on Jason. This results in Jason expert Rowan, played by Alexa Doig, who's actually done quite a bit of sci-fi stuff on TV. It's kind of a fitting actress, actually, for the setting of this film. She and Jason are frozen in cryogenic stasis for over 400 years. And in 400 years, Earth has become uninhabitable, but perfect for a bunch of college students to go on this little archaeology excursion, where they find Jason and Rowan. The group of kids are somewhat nostalgic to what we're used to. It may be the future, but we still have the stoner, the horny couple, the whatever this is, the kind of main guy, the asshole professor, and the android. Oh yeah, we're in the 2000s now. So yeah, androids. Inside the ship, we also have a pervert pilot and a group of military space marine guys led by Peter Mensah.
It's gonna take more than a poke in the ribs to put down this old dog. Yeah, that ought to do it.
I gotta say, the spaceship is very 2000s television, but it also feels like they just took parts of completely different sci-fi shows and put them together for scenes in this movie because there's no consistency whatsoever in the interior of the ship. It looks better than what I would have expected from a Jason in Space movie. It's not great on its own merits, for sure, but within the franchise itself, I'm pleasantly surprised. The outfits are also rather atrocious in this film. And I'm not one to talk about fashion myself, I'll admit that. But these are bad. It's a mix of 2000s midriff era with trying to be futuristic, and it's not. It looks like some Frankenstein concoction of clothing. The professor is able to wake up Rowan and has another perform an examination on Jason. Upon learning that Jason would be worth a fortune, well, academic integrity be damned, I suppose.
Giggity.
You know, this might be the first time I've seen a digital effect of nipples falling off. Please, feel free to enlighten me if this has happened before.
Boobs are not Lisa Ryder's boobs. It's a prosthetic that goes over it.
Giggity.
Jason wakes up and gives another of the top 3 kills in the franchise. Oh, I love it. And then spends the rest of the movie killing some of the students and all the soldiers. This includes introducing this neat VR room, which has some pretty fun moments in it.
Beer? Or do you want to smoke some pot?
Or we can have premarital sex.
Giggity, giggity.
It is pretty fascinating how we've gone from most of the kills happening in the final act of these movies to them happening throughout the entire thing. The space environment doesn't really do too much. It never feels as claustrophobic as it should, and space itself doesn't feel like a threat until towards the end of the film. It's mostly just Jason killing people like usual, not that different of an environment. And only a couple of the kills are really unique. After killing off all the soldiers, Jason then takes out the pilot. This causes their ship to crash into this spaceport, and I'm sure that set the kill count for Jason way up. I do like this part here where Jason recognizes his old machete.
Guys, it's okay, he just wanted his machete back!
And the professor gets an off-screen death. That's annoying. Rowan and the remaining students try to use a shuttle to escape. They meet up with Peter, who's still alive, and they save him. You know, that's some crazy medical technology here. They can restore limbs. I feel like there's a lot of potential we could have played around with here. Well, the shuttle gets destroyed by this poor girl who lost her mind to fear. But don't worry, because the android is in leather now. 2000s sure like their leather. I love how poorly filmed and edited flips are supposed to make us think something looks cool. The android kills Jason, and then they make contact with an emergency escape shuttle. They can't open the door. Oh, and Jason's back. But this is Uber Jason. Uber. Oh boy. Now he's got a sci-fi version of his hockey mask.
Oh, this sucks on so many levels!
You know, they were gonna kill a character off like this in Alien. Peter sacrifices himself and Jason lands on Earth too. Now to bring a new generation into a whole new hell of terrors. Jason X embodies all of the campiness you expect from these movies, but in a very 2000 manner. That said, most of the time this movie looks like ass. The color grading is certainly an issue with it. And I think that the film really depends on the mindset that you're going for. It's definitely self-aware, and it doesn't pretend like it's not stupid.
Oh, this sucks on so many levels!
Which I can respect that more than a film that is stupid and pretending that it's not. You know what you're going for at this point. You know what you're gonna get at this point. It doesn't stand out much compared to the other movies of the time. The only highlight is Jason. Even still, I personally, embarrassingly, had a lot more fun with this movie than I expected. And again, this is really tricky to rank because it depends on your mindset. And there's a lot of fans for this one for that specific reason. I think it's safe to say this one deserves its own spot. After years of development, years of waiting, years of wishing, time had finally come for Freddy vs. Jason.
If Mama's boy here, he's big, he's dumb, he's slow, he's stupid, and he ain't got no style!
An idea brewing since 1987 that finally came to life in 2003. 2003, when Freddy hadn't even had a movie in nearly 10 years, which was an even longer wait. He went out on a pretty good note, New Nightmare, solid movie, whereas Jason was still fresh with Jason X. well, fresh in memory for stoners and for people who stay up late watching TV at 2 in the morning. Still, the idea of bringing these two together was the most ambitious crossover since Godzilla fought King Kong. Kids who had never seen these movies, adults who had never seen these movies wondered who would win between these two. What would happen if they met up? Well, they finally got their answer. Now, this entry is a crossover film, but I'm still gonna qualify it. And I suppose if I ever do this type of video for Nightmare on Elm Street, which I probably will at some point, I'll just rehash this, or maybe I'll have a different perspective by then, who knows. Say what you will about this movie, but it was the highest grossing feature for both franchises. I'm saying people who didn't give a shit about these movies were curious enough to see what would happen if these two duke it out. I'm pretty sure this is the first film from both of these franchises for quite a bit of viewers. The development of this film was a nightmare. A lot of money was spent in having this bounce around different writers and filmmakers. Hell, they wanted Del Toro, Peter Jackson to tackle this. Rob Zombie was asked, Wes Craven was asked, which makes sense. The film ended up with Ronnie Yu, who gave us Bride of Chucky. Turned it down at first, but decided to tackle it after being gifted creative freedoms. Robert Englund agreed to play Freddy again, and this would be his last major appearance of the character, and the movie just would not have worked without him anyway. It takes a special charisma to make Freddy work. Now the real shock is that Kane Hodder does not play Jason. Apparently he wanted to, and Cunningham also wanted him back.
The decision not to use Kane Hodder really had nothing to do with Ronnie. Ronnie said from day one, if you guys want Kane Hodder, I don't care. But one of the executives at New Line said, no, let's go a different way.
Instead it went to Ken Kersinger, who was a bit taller than Hodder. Ken played a double for Hodder in Part 8, as well as having a bit role, and his portrayal of Jason would end up being one of the most iconic in imagery. This particular image in general, I'm sure many of you are familiar with. The film opens in 2003, I think.
Giggity, giggity.
Where Freddy gives us a little glimpse into his past, as well as recapping his movies, ignoring New Nightmare for obvious reasons. Freddy is stuck in hell because nobody friggin' remembers him, so in order to reinstill fear into his name, he needs Jason to kill people. Jason does the killing, and Freddy takes the credit. To do this, Freddy uses the image of Jason's mother, definitely not Betsy Palmer, to talk into going to Elm Street to kill some kids. This moves us to the main cast of teens here. Monica Keenan as Lori and her friends Kelly Rowland, wow, as Kia, and Catherine Isabel as Gib. They invite some boys over and engage in activities
Giggity.
When Jason somehow gets into the house and kills Gib's boyfriend that no one is going to miss, except for his friend. Oh. The story shifts to Lori's boyfriend, played by Jason Ritter, son of legendary actor and comedian John Ritter, who had been locked up in a mental institution alongside anyone else who has ever encountered Freddy, because the authorities don't want anyone to think back on old Fred. They escape the institution, which never really becomes an issue later in the film, and try to warn the others, but of course no one listens to them at first, and instead go to a rave in a cornfield with the worst working glow sticks I've ever seen. Man, this is a set for Smallville if I ever saw one. Gib is attacked by Freddy, but Jason takes the kill. Freddy is enraged at Jason for doing what he told him to, realizing what he just got himself into. Jason then continues to attack the rave, so the group of teens escape, and instead of going to the authorities, after learning their close friend died, decide to go to bed. But before that, Jason Ritter tries to tell Lori that her dad killed her mom, and that's why he was locked up. The dad proceeds to make himself look not guilty by choking out Jason Ritter. Great defense there. Wouldn't be a Freddy movie if there weren't untrustworthy adults who lacked the ability to communicate. Oh, and Jason Ritter's friend dies in a pretty cool sequence with the letters from Freddy popping up on his back. Lachlan Monroe from Scary Movie is the only cop who wants to help them, and he's dead.
You still got me. Come on, give Daddy a kiss. You kissed your dad on the mouth?
Holy shit, we're an hour into the movie already? The group breaks into this psychiatric hospital to get this drug that'll suppress their dreams, because they needed some kind of plot to get this moving. You know, like Godzilla and Kong movies when they pretend to have a story. Freddy possesses the stoner guy so he can drug Jason, which allows the main gang to take Jason to a van and drive to Crystal Lake from Elm Street. Well, Ohio to New Jersey is roughly 9-hour drive, over 500 miles. It's not that unbelievable, but to do that in a single night, when it was already late to begin with? The plan is to take Freddy into the real world and have him duke it out with Jason for real.
Giggity.
The dream fight between them is pretty fun. Freddy loses both arms and shoots Jason around like a pinball. Finally, the two fight. This is what Freddy went out with. Now, what I don't understand is, if Freddy's in the real world, how is he even taking one punch from Jason? He's just a guy now, right? But once he's in the real world, he has no dream powers anymore, just his claws. I don't know, he loses anyway. But he's not dead, because they gotta leave up the possibility of a sequel with Bruce Campbell that will never happen.
We had that conversation, and here's how it went.
Hi, this is New Line Cinema. Hey, we were thinking of making Ash versus Jason versus Freddy. What do you think about that?
I think it's a great idea. Now Ash can finally kill Jason and Freddy. Hello?
In fact, this is the last movie for both characters before getting rebooted. This is an oddly nostalgic movie for me. It's not good, but it is really goofy, and that actually is a compliment given the context of the film's release. Horror took a different shape during these guys' careers. Sure, they tried to be scary at times, but more so focused on the fun. Took a shift, however, when we got to post 9/11 world, and a really clumsy movie like this was really the escape that we needed from that. Audiences weren't as easy to scare anymore, but here we got to watch Jason get flung around like a pinball. I guess I can look at this more favorably retrospectively because it's so dumb, and it was kind of needed. Yes, there are lots of flaws. Jason also doesn't look that great from up close. His head looks like a Spirit Halloween mask. Freddy also looks really rubbery, but it's not his worst look. The performances, on the other hand, are great, and even the human characters are halfway decent from what you would expect out of these movies, but it's still a very dull plot that exists purely as filler for the main reason you're here. Now we go deep into the 2000s. Here we have the land of remakes, reboots, and a dry spell of originality. So let's throw Friday into the fold too. Someone at New Line liked Texas Chainsaw Remake and thought Friday should have the same treatment. And Bay is producer of this one, as if you couldn't tell.
You could wallpaper the whole place with him, but the owner makes the rules, and he's a real...
This remake was made with the intention of taking the first 4 movies and shoving them into a single film reworked for modern audiences. Yeah, that about sums up what this movie is. So, new continuity, new movie, new Jason, who was played by a stunt actor who very much wanted Jason to be seen as a victim. Well, he was an origin. When I started the film, at first I was worried I was watching some prototype because I did not think these were the actual cast cards here. Very, student film approach. The opening sequence is a flashback, as if the filter didn't give it away. We have Alice in 1980 on June, Friday the 13th. Hey, would you look at that? Kills Pamela Voorhees, who gives us a very exposition-y dialogue because they're very short on time here to do the entire first movie. This isn't inherently a bad idea. Most people think the first movie is boring besides for the ending of it. So just give us the good bits instead of doing the exact movie again. This is where it starts to lose me. Jason witnesses his mom getting decapitated, who thought he drowned. Yes, he didn't. And then he takes the machete that killed her. And now I will have my revenge. 2009. What a year for movies. We jump 30 years later to Whitney and her friends looking for a crop of weed in Crystal Lake.
Giggity.
Well, they found it, and Jason too. I should also note that I'm looking at the unrated killer cut of this movie. Apparently there's a whole extra sequence and extended gore and nudity, but they also removed scenes and dialogue from the theatrical release, so that sucks. Jason opens up with the sack on his head like in part 2. God damn it, even this movie has lens flares? And this is when we started using CGI for the tips of weapons. Definitely a bigger improvement from Jason X. So there's Friday the 13th part 1 and 2 done within 20 minutes. And finally, the opening title. Wow. A few weeks later, we have a couple of college-age kids going to stay at a summer cabin on the shore of Crystal Lake. While there, they realize they are actually in an episode of Supernatural. I mean, it's Jared Padalecki, following Tom Welling's footsteps as a CW actor playing in a remake of a horror film. Even funnier, his co-star of Supernatural, Jensen Ackles, also starred in a horror movie remake of the same year, My Bloody Valentine. Was CW giving them a break to work in movies or something? So Jared plays Rob, the hero of part 4. Now named Clay, looking for his sister, Whitney. The character we didn't see die in the opening, so that means she's alive, obviously. The leader of the youths is Trent, and I like how basically every asshole male lead of the original films and of Michael Bay movies is wrapped into a single person here. The type of character you just can't wait to see get Jasoned. Is this also not just the Texas Chainsaw remake? Well, it sure is the same director. Jenna thinks that Pilecki is cuter than her boyfriend and decides to join in this complete stranger's crusade to find his sister. It wouldn't be a Friday the 13th movie if no one interacted like a proper human being.
Like that, bitch? You know you do.
Are you sure this isn't a straight up Michael Bay movie? One of the big things they wanted to change was Jason's mask. How does he acquire the mask? Why is it so important? Why is it significant to Jason? They were going to finally expand on that lore in this version. In the original, he walks out with it after killing Shelly. It's not very glorified, but that's also because they probably weren't expecting that to be his big image, and because they thought they were only going to do 3 at the time anyway. In this movie, he finds it, and in the mirror decides, yeah, I like that. I mean, after all, this other guy called him ugly.
What the That shit ain't fucking right, dude.
But that bastard made Jason all self-conscious. He's got a girl waiting for him back at home, and you gotta bring down his self-esteem like that? Jason gets himself a 2-for-1. Giggity. I don't have as much to say about this group. They got a little character to them, I suppose. Still nothing compared to this. They also gave Jason this tunnel system, which kind of demystifies him a little bit. After all, 2000s was a time of everything needs to be explained.
Fucking whore! Alright, now clean it up!
And he let Whitney live. So Whitney is both Ginny and Sandra combined, but instead of a clever psychological attack, Jason just thinks that, oh, that kind of looks like my mom. I'll keep that. It's 6 weeks, and all they did was put a little dirt on her face and her nails. And again, I have a lot more questions about how and why she's alive. There's also a significant difference between versions of the film here. In the theatrical cut, Whitney fiddles around with his GPS device trying to escape, but Jason stops her. In the extended cut, Jason sharpens his machete, which is cool, but then a flashback of the flashback we already saw at the beginning of the film, in case you forgot, and he throws a little temper tantrum about it. I mean, yeah, you're using the same damn weapon that killed your mom, of course it's gonna bring back bad memories. And calms down after looking at Whitney. She actually succeeds in escaping. This scene has no purpose in the film whatsoever, except extending the runtime. But we get to see a little more of Jason's tunnels and his little corpse room. Giggity. This ultimately ends with her just getting captured again when she reaches the home. So nothing was accomplished. Except maybe an attempt of giving the audience anxiety?
In my next life, I want to come back as one of the buttons on the ass pocket of her jean shorts.
Are you sure that this isn't a Michael Bay movie? This is a real brutal death here. They hang on for a while so you can hear all the gurgling of him choking on his own blood. Everyone in this movie is an asshole, so time for Jason to start killing. I like the little jitter on the CGI axe there. Blonde girl's death reminds me of Bob from Halloween. They couldn't hold the frame too long or else it would have been the same thing. Trent's death is so frustrating for the express purpose of cool looking kill. This guy is offering you a ride to get in the damn truck, but oh no, I'll just stand here long enough for the killer to catch me. I wonder if this guy will get blamed for it. Jared Pilecki gets to fight Jason in the way we deserve to see Rob and Tommy do, but he gets to survive. It's interesting that the love interest dies in this one. Instead of a final girl, we get a sibling duo, and Jason jumpscare ending. I know a lot of people really like this movie, some even think it's the best one, and that's just incorrect. It is, however, one of the better remakes for a horror film of this generation, I'll give it that. But it's still essentially, here's the best parts of 1 through 4 in a 2009 coat of paint, which is not as fun to look back on. Some of the kills are cool, getting past the CGI blood and blades. This is a good starter movie for Jason. It doesn't bring much new to the table at all, but it does present the general concept in HD. Jason's new design here is pretty good. It's a more lean Jason than the brick we're used to. He's pretty fast and agile. They went for a more humanized approach alongside the whole victim thing, kind of like part 2 where he still looked like a crazy woodsman instead of a movie monster. It's just kind of dull. Sure, it's definitely superior to the original film, although truthfully both of these have issues, like scenes that waste our time. So I'm just gonna go here with it. And with that, it's been almost 2 decades since Jason has appeared on screen. I think the first reboot kind of proved that, sure, we can do the same thing for a new generation, but it's still the same thing we've seen before. So I can't help but wonder what a new Jason would be like for this generation. Especially now in this higher art standard for horror, it's hard to throw something as absurdly silly as Jason out there when people aren't that interested in it. Which also makes me wonder, what would be the best approach? A serious, intense horror film that makes Jason truly scary? Or a fun one that treats him like an idol? Or maybe they'll just make a legacy sequel ignoring every other movie, and we are getting a TV show based on Pamela, which truthfully doesn't sound very interesting to me, but there's potential to play around with, so I will be checking it out when it comes out. Whenever it comes out. In terms of ranking these movies, it's really not that easy. The way that these films entertain just hit people differently. They're guilty pleasures. The studios were embarrassed, but the audiences showed that they love this kind of stuff. I think Ebert's review of Part 2 really sums up the cultural impact these movies had. He was watching the movie bored out of his mind, but he was more astounded by the audience's reactions. They cheered and leered at the film, especially the younger viewers. He was amazed at how the things that fascinated the young viewers of his generation on screen have both lowered in standard and quality. Here were a bunch of kids who wanted to see their gore fests and breasts. But as the decades go by, the standard again changes what people want on screen. And it makes me even more curious on how people look at Jason. People like myself who grew up watching these movies are going to be a lot nicer to them. Even though you might not agree with my rankings, I still have a soft spot for these. I read a lot of reviews that were still as aggressive to these movies as they were from critics back in the 80s. And that's where part of me kind of wants to see a serious, scary Jason for the first time. I think that could be really exciting for audiences. I'm sure these are some controversial takes on my part, so let me know in the comments which are your favorites of the series. Would you love to see Jason return? And if so, what approach would you like to see the filmmakers take? Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like, and please subscribe if you haven't already. It really helps my channel out a lot. And as always, I'll see you next time.